Welcome to Name Not Found. My name is Colin.
My name is Chris.
And we're going to be talking about video games. I'm going to lead us in very generally, mostly because I have a beer. Chris has a beer. It's 12:27.
I'm running on 3 hours of sleep.
Woo! Yeah. Our various jobs have kept us away from the podcast for a week, and we don't even have Disneyland to blame. We just have Colin to blame because my girlfriend was away in Denver, and I had a ton of work, and so there was just a whole bunch of stuff. But we got some fucking hot takes for you guys today. So number one, we're going to do a callback to one of our earlier podcasts. Chris, there's a story coming out of Atlas that we want to hear about.
Yes, there is. I just want to point out, when we started this podcast, I was just saying, like, all right, you want to intro the show? And he's like, yeah, sure. I'm like, yeah, he's got it. Opens up with generic video game opening. I'm like, yes, he is truly my family.
I didn't promise greatness. I'm just going to put that out there.
You are not PlayStation. Greatness does not await you.
No, greatness does not await you. Mediocrity awaits. So we're Sega. Great.
And
okay.
That is the podcast title.
Yep.
Mediocrity awaits.
Nice.
No, we can just stop right now. It's like 3 minutes in. We're done.
We already hit the peak. We summited. We didn't use Sherpas. We hit it. Good job, Chris. I've been Colin.
I've been Chris. We don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
Okay, yeah. Cool.
Whatever. I'll just say that last time we talked, we did talk about how in Persona 5 they had very strict streaming rules, and it's like you couldn't play after, I think, like a third into the game.
I think the date was 7/7 that they mentioned specifically. That it was like, don't stream after this date, which is a spoiler.
Yeah, which pretty much like something happens here, and I'm like, okay. And we again with the argument is like, oh, I see what they're trying to do. They don't want to spoil the plot, but the thing is they came out. It says that Persona 5 players. This is from Polygon, by the way. Persona 5 players can now stream the game for a bit longer. It said the publisher revised its original video guidelines for the game, laying them out in a blog post that apologized for anyone who felt threatened, and that's in quotations, by previous rules.
Well, they kind of came out and said, hey, we're going to ban you from your channel. We're going to do X. It's like, these are people's livelihoods. So, like, the fact that they put threatened in quotation marks is really messed up. It's like, yeah, you definitely threaten people. So, like, what's the deal here?
I'm sorry, that quotation mark threatened thing was like, that's the most passive aggressive thing you could do.
Oh,
you
my
literally
God.
did threaten us. Like, that's literally what you did, you know? But they changed the date to refrain from streaming to 11/19, which I will say, from my playing experience, that's when you hit endgame, and I'm like, all right, I can. It's basically saying don't stream the end of the game, and it's like, still, they're kind of. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I mean, I think the biggest issue is the way they presented it. I feel like if this was presented in like a positive way, in like a, hey, you know, we're going to be working closely with content creators because we know how valuable you are to our community, especially in its Western base. And so we'd like to ask for these specific things. You know, feel free to reach out for us if you have any questions or concerns or comments. You know, we're really interested in working with you. And I guarantee you, what do streamers and YouTubers love more than anything? Let me spoil that for you. Fucking attention. So like that positive attention, I think would have been like positive story. Atlas is working with Western content creators. B, they probably would have gotten less troll streams. Gonna stream till 7/7 because fuck the authority. Like, how many streams did you see on Twitch like that? Like,
yeah,
you know, there was a ton. And so it's a poor not esoteric, archaic way of going about PR.
Do you know how you solve this? Literally, and you can do this in a threatening way, okay? And I say you could, and I would actually be okay with this. If you had gone along and said, okay, we don't care how long you stream this game, but if you intend to stream past this date in the game, even if it was the previous date, you are required in the title of any video or stream or on the screen itself to put warning spoilers for this game on the screen, okay?
Or there will be consequences.
Or there will be consequences, banning, etc. That's it. That's all.
And it's so simple because it treats you. Wonder what happens when we treat our audiences like adults. Like, if somebody wants to watch it, guess what? That game came out in Japan 6 months ago. I could have spoiled Persona 5 for myself. I know zero things about that game besides the fact that we're, stereotypical Japanese high school students who end up doing heists. Like, whatever. Like, just, yeah.
Can I just say, I am now imagining you going on Google Translate and just typing in the Japanese text of Persona 5 and just getting the story, but completely wrong translation.
Oh, yeah.
Just like...
completely wrong.
And then Persona-san went, and I'm like, that's not even his name! Like...
Well, I would assume that no one in the game is named Persona. That's a very, Microsoft move where they just name everything after their actual protagonists.
That's the name of the main character in Halo. He's just the Halo, right?
Yeah, he's the Halo guy, just like Zelda.
He's Halo, just like Zelda.
Yeah, Zelda wears green, has a sword, that thing.
How much does it hurt you to say that right
now?
Don't
ask me about that. I did it for the podcast. I sacrificed my body and soul for you.
You are slowly going to hear my laughter just turn into like Mark Hamill's Joker, as I just go like, because I'm going insane.
Well, I mean, stream. Stream. We're not streaming. Funny story. I was just streaming and I got my ass whipped at Smash because that's what happens. But I've heard that laugh so many goddamn times, and you get better at it every time. And I'm like not like upset that you get better at it, but the problem is it like brings up like childhood fears of Mark Hamill's Joker, and I'm just like,
people said they feared Heath Ledger. I'm like, man. The rictusy smile of Joker's victims because they couldn't show blood in the animated series. Remember when he threw those bombs down and there were just people stuck with smiles on their faces? That was horrifying. It was horrifying. And also, to be fair, Colin does also hate that because I've been doing that since I was like 10. And yeah.
Yep, never heard that before, everybody. That is brand new content.
Yeah.
Hot from the presses.
What's the problem with being a voice actor for everyone else, even in our family? It's like impressive to them when I do these voices. For you, it's like, yeah, I heard that already. Dude, come up with new material. It's hard to come up with new material for you. I've been hanging out with you for how long? Like,
I mean, how do you think I feel? I mean, we did Oogie Boogie Man at karaoke when I was living in Connecticut with you, and it brought the house down because we're the shit and we know it and we're the best, so everybody else can suck it.
Sorry.
The best was me trying to fit myself in there, and I was like, Oogie Boogie song, yeah.
Although they fucking loved it, and I was dying, and we were both slightly drunk, maybe.
No, Chris. Obviously, we did not imbibe any alcoholic beverages.
We are mature adults, sir.
Yeah, adults.
We are 16 minutes into this podcast. Where are we going?
I don't know. We're going to figure it out. But back to sort of archaic business practices.
Yeah.
We also saw another report out of Polygon, where this also, it's going with the theme of callbacks. So the reason that Nintendo discontinued the NES Classic, which obviously had terrible time with actually getting enough units out there, is because they're using their production line to create the SNES Classic, which I would argue would be more popular, just considering the catalog of that system.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, here's the problem. I was telling you this a bit before the podcast. I had a friend, when they discontinued it, Best Buy said, it's like, all right, we just stocked them up for this morning, and we're going to, once they're all sold out, they're gone. That's it. And that's all we got left. And my mind was like, I think Nintendo's doing, I literally said this before they announced it. I was like, I feel like Nintendo's doing this so that they can announce the SNES Classic and then everyone's going to freak out and buy it real quick because they think it's going to go out of stock. And it's a fucking marketing move. That's literally, in my mind, the only reason it's happening. Like, that's
that's actually almost giving Nintendo too much credit. I just think that they don't have the production capability to ship all that shit over to the West.
Fair.
That's just me personally. I mean, literally, again, the theme of the podcast, we're a bunch of idiots and we don't know what we're talking about. So this could be for a multitude of reasons. But I think that what's interesting is going back to sort of the archaic business practices is the idea of enforced scarcity just sort of isn't a thing right now.
No.
And it's kind of an old style practice where everything was, again, like we talked about previously, in a box store. That's just not the way people buy stuff anymore. You order it online, you get it delivered, you do all of these things. You pay middlemen to take away the stress of going to a store. Maybe they don't have it. You reserve that fucking copy so that when you get home from work, you just have your game or your system or whatever.
Do you remember when they I think it was Amazon started doing it would be delivered to you on release day, like literally morning of release day? That was the greatest day of my life. It started happening freshman year of college, and I was just like, oh, this is the best thing ever. This is the best thing ever. And because I've always hated the idea of going to midnight releases of things. Like it's
man, I love that.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Like, okay, so the reason why I think is I had a really great experience with the midnight release, even though I didn't end up liking. Well, I liked the game, but it wasn't like my favorite game of all time. So for Super Smash Brothers Brawl, every single person who played Melee can tell you that was like the best worst day of their lives. Like, I was with Dave and Alex, who you know very intimately, and we rolled up to a GameStop blasting Daft Punk's Alive 2007 in my old Ford Focus, so that one of us could stand on line, but we were bored. So Alex drove my car next to the line so we would have music to dance to while we waited until midnight release to get Brawl. Like, that's how insane we were. And so like that was so fun. But the only other time I could ever think of like actually doing midnight releases was honestly for Harry Potter books. Like, I never really did it for games besides Brawl.
Yeah, I for Harry Potter books, I remember my mom actually signed up from the beginning for the club, so she got the copies mailed to her.
Oh, that's right. I remember that. I remember you telling me about that. That was years ago.
Oh yeah, it was like you could sign up for this thing. Like, she was an early adopter. Like, right as it was released in the States, she immediately jumped on it because she wanted me to. I didn't read as much back then. But I didn't read as much, and then that happened, and then Lord of the Rings happened, and then I started reading everything. I never really waited for a lot of midnight releases. I mean, I've had those fun times. Like, if I was with a group, there's a difference. If I was with a group of friends, it is way more about the experience for me. It's way more about, hey, we're going to go wait for this fucking game. Yeah, and we're going to go do it, and then we're going to go home, and we're going to go play it together. That's what we're going to do.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, but the thing is like, I don't get when I'm like, oh, I alone am going to go wait in this line for this thing that I could order online and just have delivered to my house. And I'm like, it's the same thing. But going back to like the Nintendo thing, my argument is like, why are you going to spend? And I hate to put it this way because it's their IP and their stuff. But I will argue, and I'll get to why it's their fault. But why am I going to pay $60 for a device to play an older system when I can get it on my computer and emulate the whole thing, which I argue is Nintendo's fault for not properly releasing those things in a digital store earlier and more available to people. So I don't understand why anybody wants one of these things in the first place, so I just don't get it. I really don't. I don't know.
I feel. No. I feel you, but at the same point, because we've seen it being released like so many times over, I feel like most of the time people are completely resistant to, this sort of idea of being like over marketed to. But what I will say is it's almost unconscionable that this thing won't be successful, even saying that, just because of how popular those games are.
Yeah, I can totally and utterly agree with you. I don't get why people want it. I can see wanting to play SNES games. That's cool. I just have one of those. I have one of those systems in my house that plays like NES, SNES, and it actually has a Genesis thing, like all-in-one system that you can just plug in, and like I just sit and play that when I want to be bored, and just chill out. And actually, segue. Speaking of chilling out,
Nice segue.
so since like yourself, I've been really just swamped with work and absolutely running, and I can't say woe is me. I love my fucking job. Okay, but but I still work like 12 to 16 hours a day doing what I'm doing, and I get home and I'm not, that moment, that like 2-3 hours when you get home, you're not quite ready to go to bed. Like you just can't. You're still energized and fired up, and I like to play a game. But the problem is I don't want to play a game that's like too like intense, because I'll end up staying up for 6 hours, and I can't have that. So I've been playing for the past week Stardew Valley. Okay, Stardew Valley. Yeah.
So I've heard so many good things about the game. What do you think of it?
Okay. What I will say about this is I love games like that because you turn off your brain and all you're doing is farming. Like Harvest Moon 64. Very well done. I will say some of the like control-wise can be wonky, but that's I can't. It's not completely wonky. It's just because you point and click where you want to hit things and do you with your hammer or pick or whatever. So that can always, no matter what you do, that's going to be a bit wonky, But everything else is wonderful with that game. It's beautiful. The songs are not like the music is great. I mean, it's got that classic like you can get married thing. You get chickens and then you get cows and then chickens. Yeah, I'm slowly losing my mind. But it's one of those things where I can completely zone out on it, and that's what I love about it. It's just one of those things that I'm like, okay, there's no stress involved in this game at all. Now I would ask, do you have those games at all, like dead games?
Yeah, no, I have had them, and what's interesting is like, as you were saying, I think what's really interesting about games is they can fill very specific niches for what you need, and it can get kind of tricky over dependence. Yeah. So like over relying on games, playing games to detriment. We both have history of that. Thankfully, we've never been too into MMOs.
I was for a short period, and then it stopped.
Right. But I mean, we've always had relatively full social lives, so that's never been a need of ours, thankfully, because we love to spew bullshit and talk to people.
Yeah,
so hence
we're
the
liars,
podcast.
cheats, and scoundrels. That's what we are.
Right. Of course. So excuse me, I just had a cough, so I just wanted to cough off mic. The biggest thing that is with me is like games fulfill like a certain thing. And the games that have done that over the years have, for the most part, been very low. I wouldn't even say low stress, but very low action. So like some of my favorite games were like pretty high input, like Super Smash Brothers Melee. A game like all the platformers. Like I love every platformer, even like super hard ones like Super Meat Boy. I want to be the guy.
It's just fun. It's just so much fun. Although that is one of those games where you will like rage occasionally.
Oh yeah, you'll rage, but also you'll get like so in the zone that you like are just like, oh my god, I have to beat this, and then it's like it raises your stress level. But I think it's more like the stress level of like quick, very precise actions and stuff like that. Like Metroid Prime is another game that I played a ton of, like the Prime series. So the games that like sort of filled that niche of like, here's post work and we're just gonna like relax and do anything. The biggest one for me when I was younger is a game called Gunbound, which not a lot of people know about. So Gunbound was an old style Korean multiplayer game, and it was very similar to Worms Armageddon, if you're familiar with that game.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Worms. I'm actually looking up Gunbound right now. Oh shit!
You remember me playing this?
Yes,
game.
I do remember. I've never played it. I remember you playing it.
Yep, I played it a lot. So the biggest difference for those of you who know Worms is that instead of it being about the weapons you select, it's about the rig or the mech you select. So you select a character, essentially, and each character has different abilities, different ways they can fire, different ways they won't fire, and you play against other players to hit their mech and destroy them. And it's turn-based, so it's totally low IPM. There's a timer for how long it takes to take the turn, but it's not very intense, so you can wait, let the turn play out, maybe do something else, like just sit, let it happen, and like go into the next turn. The game sort of after that was sort of all of my RPGs. Like every RPG I've ever played has been that total escapism. Like there's definitely been super intense moments. I mean, we can talk about dodging lightning in Final Fantasy X or fighting Omega Weapon in Final Fantasy VIII,
Sure.
who I've beaten 8 times because fuck Omega Weapon. I want my goddamn Proof of Ultima.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is, sorry, it's Proof of Omega, but it sounds better with Proof of Ultima. Final Fantasy Tactics.
Excuse me, sir. I think you would find. No, sorry. Sorry.
Who the fuck are you? Get off my podcast.
I actually, by the way, just pure out of habit, when I do that, I was adjusting my glasses. So.
Oh, God. Ladies and gentlemen, Christopher Moulet, ladies and gentlemen. So the other game that I think I played the most, honestly, this is when we were getting our house renovated. So I would like come home from school, and we lived in a hotel for like a couple of months. And so to like get out of that space, I played Final Fantasy Tactics Advance.
Oh,
now,
dude, Final Fantasy Tactics is so
no.
Advanced?
Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. So for the Game Boy, totally different game. It wasn't the PSP release. It was a GBA game.
Oh,
and I played
right.
I played the Tactics one as well. But this game, it's not too complicated. It's not too crazy. I put 325 hours into it over a period of 3 months. Like that's how much I just like played it, fell asleep, lived with the characters, maxed everything, like every max level, every best weapon, like everything, because it was just so calming. Like the story wasn't that engaging, but
Right.
like you could name characters, so I would name them after all my favorite shows and da 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 da. But I guess now it's been tricky. I guess the only thing I can say is like my detox. Wow, that shows where my mind's at. But my chill game is actually a browser game. So I don't know if you're familiar. Do you know what Pokemon Showdown is?
No, and I'm going to go look it up now.
So Pokemon Showdown is actually based off of Pokemon, and
Really?
you would think,
Sorry.
oh, really? Oh my God. No, but what's interesting is it is totally all the stuff that you can do in Pokemon Showdown, you can do in Pokemon the game. The difference is it allows you to build a competitive team by just moving a slider. There's no like tons of hours of grinding, like creating.
I've heard
teams.
about this. Yeah.
And it's a browser-based, player-to-player competitive battling simulator. And it is so like you can get into like intense battles and you can get like craziness, but it's just so calming because you just like queue up, you let somebody go, you put on the timer, you just like let it happen, and it's just like really a ton of games of rock paper scissors, just like over and over and over again. Like, are they going to switch? Are they not going to switch? You know, is my type advantage going to work here? Or what kind of set do they have? You know, so it's like a lot of mental thinking, but not a lot of like physical execution.
Sure, I mean,
so that's like,
yeah, for me, my ultimate chill out game in the world, and I kid you not, man. And I have it on my phone. Like if I'm, I hate to sound this guy, if I'm like on a set, or if I'm on like in a studio or something like that, and I have to wait a lot of the time, but I'm usually like tired or whatever, but I have to keep my brain up and I have to keep my brain aware but not too stressed out. So I play chess. I play chess nonstop. Like you remember me, like ever since I was like 8, I've been playing chess, and it's my ultimate like cool down game. Like it's just
I've never beaten Chris in chess. I just wanted to put it out there before he did. Yeah, no. I'm just not good at chess.
No, it's not. It's not even that I'm good, really. It's just that I love it because it's the same thing that you're saying. I love when you just it has that little bit of engagement where you're like thinking, is this guy's gonna do this or that? But ultimately, you can think all you want, but you have to make a choice, and
Exactly.
you don't have the time, especially if you play like. I don't play full-on speed chess. I play like, because I'm just sitting there like every so often rounds because I'll come back to the game. And also by the way, you ever want to go down a rabbit hole? Just see the weird versions of chess that people have come up with over the years.
It's crazy because like I was thinking like, oh, chess would be a bunch of purists, and that's definitely like a part of the community. But just like any other community, there are so many mods, so many offshoots, so many like addendums. It's like pawns are too strong, so we did this to like make the pawn weaker, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, there's so many different things.
There was this game, and I'm gonna come back to it, but I can't remember what it was called, but it was literally this chess game, and I kid you not, I think this is it, but yes, okay, it was on Steam, and it's called, anybody go look it up, it's called Regimental Chess. Now, I'm gonna say this, just the description. Regimental chess is a battle game where large armies of chess pieces move and capture in mass formations. Up to 372 pieces in a single battle. And I go, what? What? How do you do this? Like, this is... It hurts me.
I, too, have that question. How, in fact, do you do this?
Like, I'm literally looking at this thing, and I'll probably just put the link in the description somewhere, because this game, to me, even as a avid chess player, it breaks my brain, and... I don't know if you subscribe to this, and I guess people enjoy it, and that's cool, but... Why mess with chess, man? Like, why?
Well,
like,
I feel like the people who mess with chess already have that reverence. Like, I come from like a ton of different communities, and like the modding community, I think, is something that is very unique to games. Is that people feel like a very personal connection to their medium. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
In no other place do you have like, no one plays the same game of Fallout than you did. Or like no one plays the same game of Elder Scrolls like you did, or you could insert any game with choice here. So unlike movies, unlike a novel, which is like a very set way of actually observing the medium and like observing and like digesting it, like one of the things that's so cool about games is that it's all different depending on who you are. So like, I feel like the people who are gonna mod chess already have that reverence and are just like, how can I like put my stamp on it? Like, because I've had so many cool games, I've had so many cool interactions, like, how can I make this thing? Now, I'm not saying there aren't crazies out there who are like, my version is better than the 1,000-year-old version. It's like, well, probably not.
Probably
you
not,
might need to build a player base a little bit.
You might need to not have up to 372 pieces on a single chessboard when it's already hard enough to keep track of pieces.
That sounds awesome.
You need to look at these images. Like,
no, I don't. I'm not going to. I'll let the people who don't listen to this podcast not look at the images. There you go. Double negative. Let's go.
Double negative, we're gonna go to a break.
Ooh, burned. All right, everybody. We will catch you after our break.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the break. I promise this time I'll keep it brief, maybe, but Colin's with me, so maybe not.
No, we're definitely not going to keep it that
No.
short. As we saw from me timing out talking about games, it's never going to be that short.
Well, first of all, if you're listening, I would really like to thank you so much for listening. I have gotten comments, and I have gotten people that have liked the show, some shares, a lot of Colin Smash friends, actually.
What up?
And but most of all, thank you so much. And if you are listening and you enjoy it, please do share the show. And you can also find us. Where's our social media, Colin?
So we're going to be posting this mostly on Def Unstable. So that's DEF Unstable at YouTube. You can also follow Chris at Def Unstable on Twitter. In terms of my Twitter handle, that's Hey, Hey, I'm Bad, IMBADD. Double D's on both Instagram and Twitter. So yeah, that's where you can find us and share all of our good stuff.
Yeah, and this is just awesome for us. Like I say every single time, like we just get to sit down and do what we always do, and it's a lot of fun for us. I would really like to encourage everyone else. We're gonna start releasing some new stuff on the channel. And when Mr. Colin has some more time away from work, he can join in. Never. This is the brief time. This is why we started the podcast, because I rarely get to talk to him as it is, and this is now an excuse. But But we talk about our my cousin Phil and very great friend, and he is a great streamer. If you haven't seen him, he's talking. Yeah, you can follow him on Twitter at Talking Mustache. He's Talking Mustache on Twitch, and he has a fantastic mustache, by the way.
It's so sick.
It's so amazing. But don't want to take up any more of your time. Once again, Colin, could you give those Twitter things one more plug for me?
Yeah. So we're gonna be Def Unstable. So that's DEF Unstable on Twitter. And honestly, just follow Chris. I rarely use my Twitter. But if you want to, that's Hey I'm Bad, as it sounds, except bad with 2 D's. And with that being said, we're gonna take you right back into the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Name Not Found.
Why do you have to sound like that? Why do you have to fucking sound like that? Hey, baby, I can't. No one wants to hear that. Yeah, they want to hear us talk like swindlers, liars, cheats, robbers, and just
What do you want? What do you want me to talk like this? We're gonna swindle you and take your stuff.
No, that just makes me think of we're gonna shopkeeper our way through the podcast. What are you buying?
What are you buying?
What are you listening to?
What are
you talking about?
This is the Name Not Found podcast.
Sorry.
My name is Colin.
My name is Chris.
And as always, we're going to be talking.
And
this is Craig. Say hi, Craig. Oh, he's dead.
Hey, Craig. Oh, wait, I'm Craig. Oh, no. I'm Craig in this bit. I didn't yes and. Oh, no. We're off to a great start. So it's really funny because when we were in the break, we actually had a really interesting topic. And the basis of what I wanted to talk about was sort of following up on the idea we ended with. So like I was saying, unlike movies, unlike books, unlike TV shows, which have only one way to digest, games have a million different ways that you can experience them. They're interactive media. So my question that I talked to Chris about during the break was, what is your biggest experience of experiencing something in a very unique way, like something that people didn't experience? So like, I know you have something off the top of your head.
Yeah, I do. We talked about this briefly because it's people hate me when I say this thing, but so Telltale Games, we've talked about them before. I'm a huge fan of them, but they're very formulaic, and tells a great story, but not a lot in the way of gameplay. Yes, absolutely. But the thing with Telltale Games is everyone loves the original Walking Dead story, okay? And then there was Wolf Among Us, which was like, oh, it's good, but it came out kind of close to Walking Dead, and it just kind of was like, came off on the side, and everyone was kind of like, meh, whatever. And then it gained popularity later. But I played the Walking Dead game, and I couldn't, man. Like, I was just like, I'm not into this at all. I don't feel invested. I felt like the story was predictable. I felt like, honestly, like I didn't have a stake. I will also admit freely to everybody that I just don't like zombie stories. I just don't. It's not because I'm afraid of them. I think it's been overdone again and again, and don't give me that whole thing. It's about the survivors, and I'm like, yeah, that's the whole point of a zombie movie, unless you're like a hack and slash. But it just didn't touch me. Meanwhile, and we can go into everything about it in it later, when I played Wolf Among Us, which everyone was kind of given like a, it's good, but kind of thing, I love that game. Like, it is probably one of my favorite games of all time. Like, let alone does the voice acting just top notch, but the story and the mystery and the intrigue, it was classic noir. Its story had me going like, what the fuck is actually happening right now? Not in a bad way. Like, I don't know what this mystery means. And usually I'm like, oh, it's clearly they're going with this or that. And I'm like, no, neither of those things. What's happening right now? This is actually amazing. And I felt like my choices had weight as well. And it was kind of cool. I don't know. It's just,
let's look at this sort of more like from this perspective. So the Walking Dead game, I know that they have like a very interesting protagonist. You start off as inmate, being driven to prison, and then you like befriend this little girl Clementine.
Yep.
And so like she's sort of the center of the story. While the Wolf Among Us is a pretty stereotypical protagonist. I mean, let's be fair. He's a brash, older man who's happens to be a werewolf. Like, I know he's very much more complicated and there's like other things, but when you look at like typical game protagonists, The Wolf Among Us is more typical while The Walking Dead is less typical. So what was it about The Wolf Among Us that drew you in where The Walking Dead sort of failed in that moment that we talked about before? That conceit, like, oh, I'm bought in. Like, I'm bought in. I'm ready to go.
Well, first, okay, I will say I'm a sucker for noir. Okay, any film noir, like old school noir films, Maltese Falcon, all that. I love these films. Okay, and that's kind of the basis of this stuff. But I think the interesting world, and it is kind of classically done, of fairy tale characters living in a modern world, right? Among humans in their own like separate kind of world where they live amongst us, but they have their own community kind of thing. And Bigby Wolf, which is the main character, who's the big bad wolf. He is the sheriff, so to speak. And just as a side note, voice acted by Steve Bloom. Steve Bloom is awesome.
Ooh, yeah, Steve.
Like,
Bloom.
I mean, Steve.
Motherfucking Spike Spiegel.
I mean,
let's go.
You can't not be on, at least kind of on board when you're like, hey, this is Steve Bloom. But I think what drew me in is, here's the thing, though. I wanted to be sure about it, so I have replayed them both before. And because I was wondering if I just was soured because when Walking Dead the game came out, the Walking Dead TV,
the saturation
is just
of zombie
huge.
games was just unbelievable. That was H1Z1. That was DayZ.
Yeah.
That was the Left 4 Dead 2
and then
craze.
you had
that
the Walking Dead TV
show
show and just like all that, and which, by the way, I don't watch because I did read the comics. I enjoy the comics. I just got too much zombies and I'm done with them.
Ooh, I'm Mr. Zombie Hipster. Look at me.
No,
I've only watched up to season 2 as well,
Yeah.
so I can't really talk.
But I think that the important part about that I found different, what drove me in when I replayed just the first episode, I wanted to see like what drew me about it. I felt like I'm like, okay, he's an inmate. He finds a girl, and then you kind of go along, and it's just about surviving and trying to survive with this girl, protect the girl. That is literally pretty much what you start to go. It's the bond that's going between them, more or less, and also the other people you meet. And with Wolf Among Us, it's literally classic curmudgeon-y, guy who, even though it's not in context, seems like he's seen too much of a war. And is, smoking cigarettes, in his apartment alone with a bottle of gin kind of thing. But then you add this sharp contrast of this kind of gritty noir is happening with Snow White, the Three Little Pigs, the Big Bad Wolf. You have all these things. And then it just ends. And I guess I can't say the thing that actually drew me because it's kind of spoilery. But the thing that happens at the end, actually, is it okay? What do you think? Personally,
I mean, how long has this game been out? Like 6 years?
Yeah, 6 years.
Like,
okay,
I think
well,
it's fine.
It just ends with
spoiler.
The first episode just ends with Snow White's severed head on the ground. It's not. No, that's the second episode. It ends with literally a severed head on the ground. Like the first. Yeah, I was right. I had to double check. The first episode ends with Snow White's severed head, literally on your front doorstep, and you're just like, okay, wait. And she was with you maybe like, I don't know, like literally, 30 minutes ago in the game. Like she was just there and then she went to go do something and with no foreshadowing. It was just like, okay, Bigby, you're going to go do this thing. I'm like, okay, cool. And I went along and all of a sudden, severed head on the ground. I'm like, okay, what? Like just, like, and that.
Yeah, that's a very what moment. It's like, I mean, fuck.
Yeah, and the thing was, and the whole thing that got you in the beginning is that the original mystery you were solving was another fairy tale character, like a unknown fairy tale characters that like very obscure one. You found her severed head on the doorstep. So you found that the first one, and you went around looking through the head, like finding the different parts. Classically, you go through it, and you do that, and you start tracking down witnesses. And you think you finally are arresting somebody that you think is involved with it. And as you're walking him back, Snow White's severed head on the doorstep when you've been with this guy the whole time, and you're like, Meanwhile, in the Walking Dead one, you get into an altercation with zombies, and this guy kind of pseudo-betrays you, but then you have friendship where somebody comes back and saves you. That's literally kind of what happens at the end of the first episode, and I'm kind of like, I didn't feel as connected to the world. That's it. That's really it. You know?
And I think that comes back to a point we were talking about before, is that it's very subjective what pulls you in. Like, for instance, I can't tell you why I love The Legend of Zelda as much as I love The Legend of Zelda. I think maybe it's the music. I'm such a music geek, and I mean specifically Ocarina of Time with Koji Kondo, but I mean when you look at the first game I played, which was Link's Awakening, that soundtrack, look up Tall. Okay, for all of you uninitiated folks, I want you to type into your little browser, Google tab Link's Awakening Tall Heights 10-hour version. Now, don't listen to the whole 10-hour version, but what I'm saying is that chiptune little thing on the Game Boy is like basically 8-bit, and it's one of the best bangers you've ever heard in your entire life. It's just like, oh my God.
Right.
And so, like, looking at the Ocarina of Time, the reason why that's sort of my big point is that there's a lot of stories about like what people experienced in that game, and I think one of the major ones that that a lot of people can relate to is the Water Temple. So, the Water Temple is notorious for being an area where people got stuck. They couldn't find that last key. Spoiler alert: you have to raise the water level up to level 3, then use the iron boots to drop it down to get to the. I mean, you do just got to drop down there and grab the key below one of the doors, and it's a small key that's hard to see, and then you fight Shadow Link, and that's fucked some people up too because they didn't know how to use Din's Fire. The point is that I had the exact opposite experience with that dungeon. I solved it the first time through. I never had any issues, and I was dumbfounded by the like. You can see forum posts like long forum posts like "fuck the Water Temple, fuck the Water Temple, fuck the Water Temple," and I got stuck in 3 completely different points. So number one, for those of you who know the game, you start off, you're trying to collect the sacred stones. So getting the Kokiri Emerald is relatively simple, and then you have to get the Goron Ruby. Now, it took me forever to realize that you had to throw the bomb flower off the top of the ridge to blow up the rock. I know it sounds stupid, but I got every child heart piece in Child Link because I couldn't figure out how to go forward, so all I did was just collect side things. So I was like stupid overpowered by the time I got there.
So you accidentally did a fully complete run of that area.
Yes. No, not even that area. The entire overworld I could get to. Sans Lake Hyla and Jabu Jabu's Belly. You could kind of get to Lake Hyla, but you can't like explore it without the silver scale. So
I feel
then
like
the
when
second
you talk
one,
about Ocarina of Time, I'm listening to a math equation sometimes because you just throw out these things that I do not remember, and it's like, and also solve for F, and I'm like, what is that? What is that?
What did I study? What did I study?
Wait, I'm not ready for this exam,
Chris,
sir.
Today we are going to be talking about the history of the Gerudo people. Please turn to page 473.
Sorry.
The second place I got stuck, Mr. Fuck and Rip headphone users, is I actually soft locked my game without knowing I soft locked my game. Allow me to explain. In the third dungeon where you get the Zora Sapphire, you carry around Princess Rutu as a child, and you get to throw her on top of switches to allow you to progress forward. I threw her into a pit, forgot where she was, so she was like stuck at the bottom of this pit. And I'm not talking like a pit that like you can see where she is. Like I threw her in a place where she didn't respawn, but she was like stuck. So like she wasn't stuck in the polygons. She was in this weird place where it was hard to like fit your character in and pick her up. Mm-hmm. So I was stuck there like so long as a kid. And like then the last place I was stuck is this is the place where I don't understand why there's not more raging. The second temple, when you're an adult, is when you're fighting Volgavia and you're getting the fire medallion. There is a ledge that you have to jump up to, and like you know how like when you jump, you can like grab on with your little fingers. Every video game character
fire
does it.
temples
with
the
close.
big hammer where you're hitting the guy. Yeah,
yes.
Okay, just making sure.
Megaton hammer, free the Goron.
I found F. Now I need to find X, Y, and Z. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, got it. You got it. So, you know how in every video game, if you get close to an edge, besides like a platformer, they'll like sort of like grab
Yeah,
on like
yeah, yeah.
every adventure. So there is a ledge inside the Fire Temple in the originals N64 NTSC release version, where if you go to this ledge, it looks like if you jump, you're gonna just fall into the lava, and like even with the Goron tunic, you just die. And so I was like super afraid, but it turns out it's like a weird polygonal ledge, so you jump up there to try to get on the ledge, and Link literally just displaces himself like a half a link up, and he just grabs onto the ledge because the ledge is set lower even though it's viewed like a half a link higher.
Yeah.
Never thought to jump up there, and for some reason people just like totally got that. They were like, oh yeah, you just like go up the ledge.
You just jump on this ledge that doesn't exist.
Right, but I just didn't get that, and oh my god, Chris, people listening to this podcast, I cannot tell you how long I was stuck on that stupid ledge. Everything after that game, all the hard shit, fucking dealing with the Lens of Truth, going back in time, Spirit Temple, Water Temple, all easy. That ledge is still to this day. Like I played through it on Master Quest. I remember going up to that ledge, and I still did it. I ran up to it, and I went, "Oh, that's not the way to go." And then I was like, "Wait, wait."
Can I ask a point? I mean, that was also a problem with the N64 at the time, though. Like that was 3D camera controls were a problem with the perspective and stuff.
It was totally new technology. I mean, even, in games that did it really well, like Banjo and Mario 64, and I mean, obviously 64 was the first one, but like, there was obviously issues there. But this wasn't, I'm telling you, it wasn't an issue with the camera, because the camera was set up in such a way that it was like really obvious that like, here's like a perfect side-on view. So that's how I knew. I could see very clearly that the ledge was like higher than Link was. It wasn't like I was at a weird perspective. It was like, imagine you're facing a ledge and then you look perpendicular to it. So like you just see Link, ledge, tall ledge. Oh, I can't jump up there, so I better go find another way around. There is no other way around.
No, there never is, man. But I totally get that. Like, so you would say, like, your experience was that you don't get why this was not difficult for people when they were complaining about this thing that you found was so easy to get through, more or less, for you.
Right, and it wasn't like the Water Temple, like, oh, I just like picked my nose and I was done with the Water Temple, but everything made sense. It all fit the rules of the universe, which like I was like, okay, I can throw everything I have at the rules of the universe and eventually I'll come out on top. And for these things, it just didn't seem to fit with those rules, and so it just broke my brain. I was like, why did this work? And that's honestly probably just the failing of the game. As much as I love that game, I'm not going to sit here and say that there aren't any flaws with it. That would be disingenuous. It's still probably top games of all time.
Can I ask you a question, sir?
Sure.
Have you finished Breath of the Wild, like the full game?
Oh yeah, no, I've completed the story.
Okay.
I have 7 shrines remaining.
Well,
speaking of games where I play on my downtime, I try to find a shrine a day, and it's been rough now.
Yeah.
I'm at the 7 shrine mark, and I have literally scoured all of Hyrule like up and down because I'm not using a guide. Fuck that shit.
You
like,
want some?
It makes it so
on a side note, like there have been very few times like there is only Stardew Valley. I will use a wiki. Because it's like there are like things like
what's the crafting?
What's this?
How do I
it's
get
like,
this person to be my wife?
Yeah, this thing you need to give her certain gifts she like, which is trial and error. Which I'm like, I want to relax. I don't have time for this trial and error.
Right. I don't have time for all this trial and error, and I could figure it out over a period of time. It's not like oh, I would never have found this if I didn't look it up.
Exactly, and it's totally cool. Like, but there are some things where like guides. I don't think I ever really used guides for games. Maybe once or twice. No, I only had the guide for Final Fantasy VII, but
I remember that guide. That guide was sick.
This guide was
remember
awesome.
It had the picture of Cloud with the Buster Sword looking at Midgar, and we would just like leaf through it and be like, oh shit, it's fucking Sephiroth. Oh shit, this is how you get the golden chocobo. Like, oh my god, like I remember that guide. Like, oh my, I didn't even own it, and I remember that guide. That's how pathetic I was as a young person.
That guide was great. And though I never really used it to progress, my way with guides are, and I usually don't use them, and I rarely do unless I'm like hours of being stuck somewhere, and I go, fine. And I just have to be like, okay, how the fuck? Oh. And it's usually that thing that I've completely gone over my head, and I'm like, oh, shit. But I don't use, like, the last time I used a guide was probably Final Fantasy VII, if I don't count Stardew Valley, because it's just, like, Final Fantasy VII was, like, there were some things that are, like, my little brain at the time could get, like, I don't understand with the numbers and the things, and what is, stats? This sword looks fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've been in an RPG where it's like most of the time you like have the bronze sword and you get the steel sword and you're like, oh, the steel sword is ostensibly better, so I'm just gonna use it. But there are some where it's like it does soul drain effect and you're like, the fuck is soul drain? And then you realize it's broken and you're like, oh god, I should have been using this from the beginning. It has life steal. But like you have to like try it out to figure it out, and yet it looks weaker and not as good. And so like guides after I've beaten games have helped me with like doing like real crazy end game content. Like I remember after I beat Final Fantasy VIII for the second time, I looked back through to see how to do a low level run, and so that involved like not doing EXP, like using the card ability to not hit EXP. So like it's just like like so many things, like guides will go for like the extra content. You know what I mean? Like not the what would be considered the main game.
Right.
Like that's where I use guides the most, I would say.
Yeah, for like extra content and stuff like that. I always felt like here's the thing. I did use it for like Persona. Here's the thing. I used it for Persona 5. I didn't use a guide. What I used is there's class you get when you're in high school. They, in order to improve your intelligence, so to speak, which helps you in the game, they ask you real world questions like, what was this famous quote that Aristotle said? And I'm like, I'm Googling that shit. I'm just Googling that shit. Like,
you know what's so funny about that? Charlotte's birthday just happened, and her roommate has Persona 5, and she was saying she was the Google mistress. Mm-hmm. She was like, I just Googled all the answers so she could get perfect scores on the test. And now I realize that everybody probably does that because they're like, fuck
no,
this.
I'm not, dude, like, I'm not here to be smart. I'm here to be an anime high school person, and that's it. That's all I'm here for, man. Like, it's,
oh my god,
it's just one of those things. I mean, but as far as just to the original topic, there are these moments in games, and I've had them, that people may have a completely different experience, and that's one of the things I think is awesome about games. Like, really awesome about them is that, here's the thing, is one of the reasons Colin and I started this podcast is not because we agree on every game possible.
Oh,
hell no.
Hell no.
It's because we talk a lot, and here's the thing. Colin and I will play the same game, have a completely different experience, and I love that we do, because we end up going, it's like, what do you think about this? I'm like, I felt this way. Really? This way, that way. And that's literally what this podcast is.
Here's a great example of this for the folks listening. Chris, what was your class in Skyrim?
My class in Skyrim I was shield mans with a big old sword. That was it. That was all I did.
Yeah. And I was a nightingale like thief, so I used bow, stealth, and a little bit of magic. Yeah. And like, so I guarantee you, Chris didn't beeline directly for the Dark Brotherhood or the Thieves Guild quests like I did, and just like did the Fighters Guild quests, maybe did the main story.
Can we also talk about how if there's any ever, and this is my MMO, this is my MO as a gamer, if there's ever the option between, well, you should stealth, but if there's a button there, you better believe everyone's dying if I'm playing this game. Like that.
Right. And my option is usually like, I wonder if I can never be seen
and
again.
Meanwhile, I'm here with a minigun going, ah, like just off on the side. Like, there's the perfect picture I have of do you remember the most recent? Like, it wasn't the most recent. It was the one before that, the Deus Ex game, the new one that came out.
Human Revolution.
Human Revolution. Yeah, it was. Yeah, that wasn't the most recent. It was the one before that, I believe. Yeah.
No.
It's Human Revolution, I think. And
wait, no, wait. Human Revolution was the one before that. What's the one after that? There was another one. It was like Deus Ex, like something. Whatever. That doesn't matter either.
X, I don't know. But I'll look it up later. But the cool part about it is I remember my cousin Phil. which we're
Phil.
amazing guy. On
He introduced me to City of Final Fantasy, and I got to kick people's ass with Squall. And
he had the and just a short fun story about that. He had the Japanese localization, so every menu was in Japanese. But we kept going for the entire thing, and this is just totally not cool. But we kept going. It's just because we had watched an episode of The Tick, and it just goes moon language whenever he sees another language at all. It says, "I don't speak your crazy moon language." So the entire time,
I just have oh my god, I have this image of Phil in his basement when I like beat like some player like I beat like a story mode, like because Squall had his own story mode, and then like when it went into the cutscene, I was like looking and like trying to not like decipher it, but like get the emotion from it. And so I'm like sitting there really seriously, and Phil would come up behind me and just be like, logic.
But the thing is that speaking of the stealth things, is like he's just like you. He will go in and he's like you ever want to talk about the biggest Metal Gear Solid fan in the world? That is Phil.
Phil is such a big. I remember when we were playing. I had never even seen Metal Gear, and he was playing Metal Gear 2.
He's so good. Like he is ridiculously good at that game.
I remember when he baited like 4 guards. This is people listening. We were like 11 or 12 when this game. It was like 2001, 2002. He was doing like pull-up bars to raise his strength on the side of the tanker as Snake before he turned into the emo guy named Raiden, who we don't like to talk about. But he lured them with a porno mag, pulled one guy off, everybody's looking, and he went around the other side and then like capped one, pushed the other off, and then shot the other one. And as a young, impressionable little mind, I was like, what the fuck is this?
To make a long story short is that he played Deus Ex like I did, and so he had this picture of him perfectly completing the mission with the assassinated guy and everyone still moving in the background. And so I sent him my Steam image of it, and I think I still have it somewhere. And I just I kid you not. Yeah, it's that image. It's literally the player, and I had gotten into a back kitchen room in the room, alerted one guard, and as they got through the door, I just shot them all, so there was a pile of bodies, and then I just photoshopped the image and sent it to him. It's like, I did it too! And I was just sitting there with like literally the like 30 guards that were in that room, but because they had to come one at a time, I was just shooting them all in the face, and they were just a pile of dead bodies, and then I just slowly walked up to the dude and shot him in the face. And I was just like, I win these games, because I'm just bad at stealth games.
I mean, as much as games are different, there's still always the sameness where if you have a bottleneck and you have a magnum, like, that's Resident Evil 4 for me. It's like,
Rule of Spartans.
Oh, Rule of Spartans. Hot gates, baby. Hot
Those
gates.
Hot gates.
Those hot gates.
I feel like we're teetering on the edge here, so I think...
we're fine. I think we're fine, right? We can go for another hour, right? Isn't
totally. So we're gonna end the podcast on that. So thank you all so much for listening. My game of the week that everyone should play is I highly recommend you get the Wolf Among Us Telltale game. It's an amazing story. You'll love it. I promise you.
I think it's like under $10 for episode 1 right now.
Well, no, if you buy it now, it's not just episode 1, it's all of it. All of it now.
Oh wow! Yeah, oh,
it's all of
sick. I might actually pick that up because I watched a stream of Jesse Cox playing like part of it, but I haven't seen the whole thing, so I kind of want to play it now.
Let me look at it right now. The whole thing is for $24. Whole thing.
Oh damn!
And that's all 6
What's
episodes.
That?
Five or 6 episodes.
Oh shit, that's awesome.
Yeah. And it's absolutely brilliant. And Steve Bloom as main character, awesome. And so that is my choice of the week. This has been the Name Not Found podcast. My name is Chris.
My name is Colin. And as always, we don't know what the fuck we're talking about.